On today's episode of You Asked, with the Nintendo Switch 2 now released to the world, gaming editor Giovanni Colantonio goes in depth with your questions now that he's had real-world, hands-on time with the new device. And speaking of the Switch 2, what's the best TV to pair with it? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is You Asked, the show where we answer your tech questions. If you've got something you want to know, send your question to youasked@digitaltrends.com. And don't forget to tune in every Sunday at 7:45 a.m. Pacific to see if your question has been selected for the show. Jose Plays asks, what's going to be the TV to couple with the Switch 2? The Samsung S90D? Jose, thanks for answering part of the question for me. Yes, the Samsung S90D is a great option. Its QD OLED panel offered at 55, 65, and 77 inches to go along with the bright color combinations we get from the likes of Switch games will make for a beautiful gaming experience. But there are some important things to note about the Switch 2. See, if you're in the market for a new TV to pair with your shiny new toy, it's easy to get gassed up and potentially overspend. While the Switch 2 does support 4K gaming and some games will support faster refresh rates, it's not going to need the same hardware that's necessary to get the best out of something like a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. 4K 60 frames per second gaming from the Switch 2 should only need HDMI 2.0 to support it. So no stressing if your TV lacks the HDMI 2.1 ports that we get from a lot of the top tier models. And the higher refresh rates that the Switch 2 hits with some games will only be available at lower resolutions, again, supported by HDMI 2.0. Long story short, if you've seen us preview, review, or debate a TV on this channel, since we primarily cover the top models, it's going to be great with the Switch 2. But given how full of rich, crazy colors video games can be, yeah, a QD OLED TV would be my top pick. Doesn't even need to be a top model. The S90D you mentioned is great and on a good sale right now. The 2025 S85F from Samsung comes with a QD OLED panel at 55 and 65 inches as well, though it's not as bright as Samsung's OLED models higher up their OLED line. But if it's not QD OLED and you want to save a little from the top tier TVs, LG's C-Series models are great gaming TVs that deliver when it comes to punchy colors and brightness that's improved every year. And for those of us who don't have the budgets for OLED, TCL and Hisense have a number of great mini LED options that come in right around and often under $1,000. We reviewed the TCL QM6K and were pretty blown away by what it offered for the money. And again, I'd say each year, these models are getting better and better in terms of brightness if that's what you want out of your gaming TV. Now, as for the latest on actual gaming hardware, let's head over to Giovanni Colantonio to give us more insight on launch weekend for the Nintendo Switch 2.
Hey everyone, I'm Giovanni Colantonio, the senior gaming editor at digitaltrends.com, and happy Switch 2 week to all of you. And hey, also happy Summer Game Fest, and Xbox Game Showcase, and PlayStation State of Play. It is a really busy week for all of us at Digital Trends. We are covering all of this, but I wanted to take some time to talk to you about the Nintendo Switch 2, because earlier this week we put out a call for questions, your questions about the Switch 2 that you really wanted answered before you made a purchase, and I'm here to answer those questions. Now for context, here's what I'll say. We got our Switch test unit on Wednesday morning, so we're still testing it. We plan to do a full review of it, but we don't want to rush it out. We want to take some time. There's a lot to dig into with this console, so I kind of decided to do this video just to get some pressing questions out of the way and give you our initial impressions. Now, before we got the console last week, we actually did do a full day preview event with it where we got hands-on with it. We got to go through all of the system settings, we got to do game chat, all of that. So I've tested a pretty significant amount of it so far, which puts me in a pretty good position to answer some of these questions that you have asked today. And I will start with a really good one, which is from Corey. Corey asks, is the mouse functionality of the Joy-Con usable, or is it more of a gimmick without a keyboard? That is a fantastic question, and I want to start with that because it's kind of the most surprising thing about the console. When they announced the mouse function, I will be very honest with you, kind of said, oh, that seems like one of those old Nintendo gimmicks that's not going to go very far. I think we're all probably used to that at this point, right? 3D on the 3DS is going to be a huge thing. Motion controls are going to be big. The gamepad on the Wii U. And then Nintendo develops a couple games for it, no other third-party bites, and that's kind of it. I kind of thought that would be the case here, that mouse controls would be something that we'd see in games like Drag and Drive and then not so much afterwards. But I have spent a significant amount of time with the mouse controls at this point, and I'll be completely honest, they are way better than you're probably expecting. What makes them really good? A couple of things. One is that they are pinpoint accurate. I mean, genuinely, you will be blown away by this thing. When you have the little slide, the little foot slide on the bottom of your Joy-Con, I mean, that thing moves like an actual mouse. And it has a lot of functions that you can use it for too. I mean, it's not just using it in games, but you can actually use it to control the home screen of the Switch and all the menus, like a mouse on a computer. And it works fantastically well. I mean, really, really great. You can even use it on your pants. I actually, the last time I demoed it, put the Joy-Con on my jeans, and it moved across it very smoothly. So there's that, really accurate. Also, easy to forget, you can use two of them at once, which means that you can kind of create experiences with it that aren't really possible on PC. I saw that a lot in the Bravely Default remaster of all things. There's new minigames. There's one that's like a rhythm game where you're kind of controlling this line and you're controlling each end of it with the separate Joy-Cons. And that was really neat and very creative. Drag and Drive I've played. That one is also really cool. The fact that you can control two wheels of this wheelchair individually, but then also pick up the controller seamlessly and use gyroscopes to shoot a basket. That stuff is unlike anything that you would get on PC. So to kind of answer that question about, is it usable without a keyboard? It is, and that's kind of because the experiences that are built for it are going to be really different, right? They're not necessarily going to be mouse and keyboard experiences so much as two Joy-Con mouse experiences, or things that are specifically made for Nintendo games. Metroid Prime 4, really great example of that. I've played that. It works incredibly with mouse aiming. I couldn't believe it when I tried it. But, it is built around that control scheme, so the controls on the other side are pretty simple. You're not going to need a keyboard for them. Now, that's not going to work for all games. There are certainly going to be a lot of PC games that aren't going to map to it specifically, ones that are built for mouse and keyboard. But, a lot of those games are being built for controllers as well, so I can see those kind of being mapped pretty easily to the Joy-Con setup. I actually played Civilization 7 with the Joy-Cons, and worked really well. It could just move the mouse and click, and I didn't really feel that I needed the keyboard to control things. So, yeah, I think that it's not going to be a gimmick. What I do think could be a gimmick is that two mouse control scheme. I don't think you'll see a lot of games like Drag and Drive. I think that's going to be one of those Nintendo things that they do a couple times and that's it. But I see a lot of potential for third-party developers to use it to do, shooters and strategy games and whatnot. And I do think you'll see a lot of support for it, and I think you'll be really pleased with how well it works. So yeah, not just a gimmick, really creative, could be the future of Switch, I don't know. But it is a really cool idea. Okay, another great question here from RMO9808. Will games get a performance boost? Aside from the ones explicitly stated. Perhaps not a bump to 1080p 60 frames per second, but a 10 frames per second bump here and there. Really great question, and the answer to that is yes, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. This was confirmed to me by Bill Trinan at Nintendo when I interviewed him back in April. He said that games would be getting natural boosts from the system hardware, and I think you'll see a lot of that in, small little loading bumps and whatnot, maybe slightly better resolution naturally. You definitely will see that in games. How pronounced that'll be in games is going to depend on the developer. So if the game doesn't have an explicit Nintendo Switch 2 edition, something like you're seeing with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, don't expect too much, but yeah, you might get some of those small boosts. I think loading time is probably the place where you're going to see it the most, so keep an eye out on that, but it's totally going to be case by case, so keep that in mind. What I will say is that the games that are getting Nintendo Switch 2 editions, like the proper boosts, really do benefit from them. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I have seen a lot of footage of that. But the last time I previewed it, they showed us a big reel of it, and it looks way better. I mean, just the density of characters on screen, you can see a lot farther, you can see more Pokemon out in the distance, smoother resolution, better frame rate, all of that's improved. It's the same art style, so if you don't like the art style, it still is not going to look great to you. But if performance was really an issue in that game for you, and if you really felt like things were popping in every 5 feet, yeah, the Switch boost is going to be really great from that. But yep, any game that you pop in, you'll probably see a tiny boost, but it's really going to depend. I wouldn't bank on it, but you'll see something. Hopefully. I don't know. Depends on the game. The ones that are in the worst shape, probably the most. Another really great question here from FairyKid64 that I've actually been asked a lot since this thing was announced. What I want to know is exactly how the screen compares to the Switch OLED. Really good question, and I had the exact same question before I demoed it for the first time because I love my Switch OLED. That screen, I can't go back to the old Switch. It looks so washed out and terrible compared to how vibrant that new display is. And I am happy to say that the new display on the Switch 2 actually is pretty good. You know, despite the fact that it's not using an OLED panel, it is way, way, way better than what we've gotten on the original Switch. And there's a couple of reasons for that. You know, the tech has just gotten much better. You can get much more out of that kind of display. So the reason that it's really held up and that this LCD screen is actually not that far off from an OLED screen is just because the tech has changed that much since the original Switch came out. I mean, don't forget, the original Switch came out in 2017. That is like a lifetime ago for displays. You know, LCD now and LCD then is completely different. And you'll really see that when you pick up the Switch 2. It is a completely different screen. Also, I mean, it's just a more capable screen, right? It has VRR support. That goes a really, really long way. I mean, this thing is a 120 frames per second refresh rate on that sucker. That's way, way leagues above and beyond what even the Switch OLED can do. So yeah, I mean, in my testing, I have noticed really vibrant colors, you know, great contrast, a lot of things that really weren't on the original Switch, which again, really when you place it next to an OLED, looks so washed out. You see that white film over it and you can't unsee it at that point. I don't think you're gonna have that problem with the Switch 2. I need to do more testing in more games to see exactly how it compares. I want to do some side-by-sides, which I haven't gotten to do yet. But trust me, it's not like going back to the old screen. The difference is not as pronounced, and I think you'll be pretty happy with it. Great one here from Kenneth Chung asking, comparing Switch 2 to the original, with the additional USB slots, what third-party accessories could we confidently use? We still have a lot of testing to do on that. I want to plug in a bunch of stuff. I know that there are certain accessories that Nintendo has kind of confirmed should work just fine. Something like the old GameCube adapter that they made for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That is supposedly going to work on it just fine. You can plug that in and should be good to go. Again, according to Nintendo, still have to test that myself. What we do know for sure, though, is that USB port does support different devices that aren't just Nintendo devices. We know that it will support different web cameras. Actually, if you go into the settings menu of the Switch 2, there is a place where it asks you if you want to test whatever camera you have connected to make sure that it works. So you can plug any USB camera in, do a test in the settings menu, make sure that the video comes on. They're supported. Now, the reason that I can't give a really definitive answer about this is because it's going to be completely different from third-party manufacturer to third-party manufacturer and from the kind of device to the kind of device. That could change radically. There's not even a guarantee that every web camera will just work on it no matter what. I think they probably will, most of them, but Nintendo has been really cagey about confirming that, and I don't have every single web camera, so I can't say it with 100% certainty myself, so I get where they're coming from. There's a lot of devices that I actually haven't gotten to test yet, but plan on doing before the review. I have a pair of the Legion glasses, and I want to see if I can plug those in and use it as an external monitor. Haven't gotten a chance to do that yet, but from what I understand, should work. I mean, that works on a phone or, you know, works on a Steam Deck, so there's no reason that it shouldn't work on the Switch 2. Everything that is compatible with the Steam Deck hopefully works here, but again, we got to do more testing there. We've tested some stuff so far, but not extensively enough. But yeah, the USB port should hopefully support a lot of devices and definitely will support other webcams, which kind of tells you that, yeah, you're probably good with a lot of things. And again, there are other questions that we've gotten here that I really want to wait to answer, just because we want to get more testing in. Questions like, how long can the battery last when you play it at 1080p at 120 frames per second? We don't know yet. I need to get a game that can actually do that, which at launch, you know, not necessarily getting a great wide selection of games that are capable of that. I assume it's going to be very much on the low end. And also keep in mind, when you have game chat active, if you are chatting with 4 other players across the internet, your battery is going to go down pretty fast. Nintendo's estimates are pretty low. You know, they're keeping them fairly conservative, you know, and they can 2 hours, 2.5 hours right at the low end. I would imagine that that's probably what you could expect for that, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if those batteries die quicker when you have it at everything going at once and, you know, maxing out your performance and having game chat going. We will test that. We will see how it goes. It's going to be a game case-by-case basis. But yeah, that's what we got so far. I will answer some of those questions in the review, so I'll keep that in mind. Okay, one last question that I want to get to here. This one comes from Jake. Jake asks, recommendations for screen protectors and other accessories? Great question. There are tons of third-party accessories already out. There's a ton of accessories from Nintendo already out, some of which are worth buying, some of which probably aren't worth buying. In terms of official Nintendo products, I've actually tested quite a few of them at this point. The Pro controller that Nintendo has put out for this system is really great. Having the back buttons on it, a great addition. Having an audio jack, something that should have been on the original Pro controller to begin with, but great to have it here. That's kind of a day one pickup if you really want something like that. If you are looking for a screen protector, I think the best deal you can get is Nintendo, I believe, is selling a carrying case that comes with a screen protector. I think that's probably going to be the most bang for your buck if you just want to pick up as many products as you can out the gate, get everything that you need. The Nintendo official lineup is actually pretty good for that. I will call out one third-party product, though, that I can kind of speak to immediately. Again, we're getting a wave of these things in, and there'll be a lot of testing to do. But I do want to call out D-Brand's Kill Switch. So what do you get with the Kill Switch? A lot, and it's kind of complicated to explain, but I'm going to try my best. So for one, you're going to get a screen protector. This is something that you would kind of place on the top of the console, you peel it off, and your screen would be protected. Hooray. So if you are looking for a screen protector, this is a good way to get one, along with a bunch of other stuff. You are also going to get this kind of case that they have for it, a cover that you can kind of put over it. It also kind of has this backing to the cover that the kickstand can go through. That's kind of a neat little design thing. Also comes with something you can put over the cover that can put the little game carts, which is like a weird innovation, but if you want like a travel kit, have a couple physical games with you, that's something that goes inside of that case. On top of that, you're going to get these Joy-Con covers. They are meant to make it a little more ergonomic. They are, actual grips on the side. They feel a little bit more like controllers. They can kind of go onto it, and they keep the Joy-Cons removable, so it's not like you put it on and then you're stuck there. You get all that, plus you actually get a kind of dock adapter as well, so that you can keep it in this case while it's docked. You don't have to take the whole thing off and, all of that. So a lot of stuff that comes in that package. Pretty good deal, I think, that you're getting there. But again, a lot of third-party accessories are going to come out. There are going to be a lot out the gate, and they're going to get better and better as the Switch's life cycle goes on. That's just the one that I have kind of messed around with so far, and is pretty neat. So yeah, a lot of accessories to come with this thing. I think hardware manufacturers are probably chomping at the bit to create things for this device. I'm hoping to see things that kind of turn the Joy-Con into a more traditional mouse, make it a little more ergonomic. But the Kill Switch is definitely one that I can recommend out the gate. I think if you're looking for something like a high-end case that makes the system a little more ergonomic and gives you some protection, it's a good place to start, for sure. And that is all I have for you this week. Again, I have to get back to actually testing the Switch 2. We have a lot to do, and I've barely gotten started with it, but I've played a lot of Mario Kart World. Really fun so far. Excited to talk to you about that more. I've played a bunch of Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is much more fun than it has any right to be. It should not be $10. That should be a free pack-in, but it is a lot more fun than you would expect it to be, and actually has taught me a lot about the system. So it's, if you got the $10 to spare, it's not a bad place to start. And then we've also got tons of third-party games that we'll be testing as well. So stay tuned for all of that. I will get you a review as soon as I can, but again, we're going to take our time. We want to make sure that we do the most thorough testing that we can for you guys, so stay tuned. And I'll throw it back to Chris. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gio, and thank you to everyone who joined us for this week's episode. Remember, get those questions in to youasked@digitaltrends.com and check back here every Sunday morning. And be on the lookout for Giovanni's full review of the Nintendo Switch 2, because there's clearly a lot to break down with one of the most anticipated console releases of the last few years. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.